Well, good morning and welcome to Ask Mason. Once again, the show that I try to do every Tuesday following a commission meeting. And I try to take all your questions and talk about anything that's on your mind, any concerns that you might have. We want our government, our city government, to be very transparent, and that's the purpose of this show. Anytime you have a question, you can go on to askmason@enid.org. Type in your question. I'll never use your name, but I'll go through those questions and see which ones are the most relevant and do my best to answer that. Another avenue that you have to ask questions now on Facebook, facebook.com/Mayor David Mason. Go on there, follow that site, and you can leave questions there as well. Now, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, I'm not going to reply to that every single week. As certain questions come up or topics, I'll do my best to answer that, but that's not going to be a platform that I use to argue topics. But it's certainly something that I can get the pulse on how the general public feels on things. So I think we have almost 400 followers already in just a few weeks. So jump on there and follow that page, and I'll do my best to answer all those questions. So, speaking of which, a couple questions that had come up over the last couple weeks. This was one that I had never even thought about. It was new. I did not have the information on it, but I did know the person that would. They wanted to know about whether or not Vance and Enid were ever used as an internment camp during World War II. And after I read the question, I thought, well, I knew that they had prisoner of war camps all across Oklahoma, but I'd never really researched that or thought about it. So I picked up the phone and I called Elaine Johns. She is the executive director of the Veterans Memorial, the association out at Woodring Airport, along with the museum that we have out at the mall. And Elaine knows so much about the history of our veterans and what went on during World War II. So I called her, posed a question to her, and she was able to come back with a lot of great information that I did not know. So I want to share that with you today. If you're interested, you can continue to research it or reach out to Elaine. But Enid was never used as a internment camp or a prisoner of war camp. However, there were what they called 7 base camps and 27 branch camps throughout Oklahoma. The closest was in Alva and Tonkawa. Both of these were German prisoner of war camps. Tonkawa could hold more than 3,000 German POWs at one time and had 500 U.S. Army guards that patrolled that camp. It was roughly 160 acres in area. The Alva POW camp had a total capacity of 5,800 men, but consistently only had in and around 2,000 prisoners there at any given time. Most of these were Nazis, SS troops, and Gestapo. 4,850 was the highest amount ever held in Alva, Oklahoma. Also, Winoka was a branch camp of Alva and had about 100 prisoner of war men there. She also put down a note that said that the farmers really liked the camps being in their area because they received a lot of free labor. So I found that question very, very interesting. And like I said, you never know what just happened a few generations ago. So if you want to know more about it, talk to Elaine or go online and look that up. I did find that question very, very interesting. My second topic this morning I want to talk about is the Stride Bank Center. You know that we are currently in what we call budget talks. This is by statute. We have to hold budget meetings open to the public that can come, and we go over every single fund that we have, or financial entity, which I believe is, if I remember correctly in my notebook, is about 27 different funds. And we go through all those funds. Each one of those departments come to the city commission and explain why they're doing what they're doing, whether they need more money for next year, if they do, what that is. And we hear all those talks. That goes over a couple weeks, of which we will have another one tonight. And then next Tuesday, May the 20th, we will actually vote on that. Actually will come to fruition, and we'll vote on that budget. The very first time I was on Ward 6 Commission and we voted on that, I had already, because of when I come on, I'd already missed part of the budget talks. So that night, showed up, voted on the budget, got a call the next day while we only spent less than 10 minutes on voting on such a, at that time it was about a $158 million budget. What a lot of times people don't realize is we have had talks now for weeks just with the commission, and then prior to that, our city staff has been working on this for several months. So it's not something we take lightly. I feel like it's something that probably one of the most important things that we do as a commission. But since our meeting last week, I've had several questions regarding Stride Bank Center and the deficit that they continue to run. But before I actually go into the deficit, I want to back up and talk just a little bit about how Stride Bank Center come about and some misnomers that are being put out there that are just absolutely wrong. The information's wrong. Stride Bank Center come along, I believe it was back, and I may get the date wrong, but I think it was in around 2012. So my first statement is why? Why is this Stride Bank Center so important to our community? Well, first of all, most communities our size have an event center. Matter of fact, many communities, a lot smaller than us, have event centers, and usually a multi-purpose type facility like we have. But the purpose it was put in was to increase our standard of life. I hear people that constantly want to say there's nothing to do in Enid. Well, that's one of the things that we put that in for back in 2012, was for a better standard of life. It also continued to revitalize our downtown. When people come to an event down there, they park down there, they go to the restaurants, all those businesses, not just in Enid, but specifically in downtown, benefit from the economic development or economic impact of those sales tax revenues and that business that comes through their doors. I also want you to know that the company that manages the Stride Bank Center, I think they manage in around 400 locations. And it's my, what I have learned is that almost every single one of those are subsidized in some way or form. I've actually even called other event centers to see whether or not their city subsidizes them. Now, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. Number two was the vote back in 2011, 2012. People are putting out there that they voted no for the Stride Center, but the city did it anyway. That is not correct. And let me clear that up. The question was, how were they going to pay for the Stride Bank Center? At that time, it was the event center. It was not Stride at that time. It was never, the city commission, the 2012 city commission had decided that the community needed an event center, a larger multi-purpose event center. They decided to keep the one that was there and simply add on and make it all look the same, that retro look. But the vote that everyone keeps talking about was whether or not to do a bond, to where they would borrow the money and pay for that over time. Or, since our city was in such good financial shape, and still is, by the way, they had money sitting in different funds that were available that they could go ahead in the event that the bond didn't pass and complete the Stride Bank Center. So, with that being said, when people tell you that they voted against the Stride Bank Center, but the city did it anyway, that is not correct. It was the funding mechanism that they voted against. And they voted down the bond. They did not use the bond. They just used regular operating dollars that they had available. So I want to make that clear. The next thing I wanted to point out is pre-COVID and post-COVID. We have never, ever thought that the Stride Bank Center could operate and make money. Was not the purpose. The city, unlike individuals, has to look at what the economic impact is to our community. When people come in, they go to our concert, but they also go to those businesses downtown. They go to other restaurants throughout town. They stop and they shop while they're in town, and they purchase gasoline while they're here. So there is an economic impact that benefits our city by having the Stride Bank Center. Now, pre-COVID, the amount that we subsidized that had gotten down to just over $300,000. That was because of several reasons. We had different, what I call better groups, better bands coming in, but pre-COVID, you could get a band come in for very, very reasonable prices. If you'll remember back, we had Reba McEntire, Alan Jackson. I mean, there was a whole list of those. You look at a spreadsheet, which I have, when COVID come along and everything was shut down, that event center has never ramped back up to the past numbers that it was running for several reasons. Those same entertainers that were coming in to Enid and doing a show for $50,000, $60,000, those things are $125,000 to $250,000. Some of them are $500,000 now. So that being said, when you have 3,200 seating capacity, you cannot have an event that cost $250,000. You can never make that work out on the cost of that. So until the entertainment business decides that they can operate at a lesser amount, we will not have those big name concerts. Also on those concerts, we were having to guarantee that. What that meant was if they wanted $125,000 to come to Enid to play a concert, that meant a guarantee that the city had to provide. So if we only sold $30,000 worth of tickets, or make the math simple, $20,000 worth of tickets, the city had to bring a check to the table for the remainder of that, the other $100,000, which was not a viable option for us. So, that being said, moving forward, we have got to figure out who we can bring in that is marketable in this market, in this area. And I have had conversations. I believe that it's more red dirt type bands, more religious bands, and more sporting events. Those seem to do very well. Now, the second I say red dirt, people go, well, why can't we bring in all the bands that Stillwater just had? Once again, we have a facility that seats 3,200 people. They had a 4-day event that was outside in the football stadium. That is not apples to apples, and some of those bands that were over there will not even come to venues that are less than 18,000 seating capacity. So we have got to find that market of entertainers that are reasonable, but yet people still have the desire to see, and we're working on that. Now, moving forward, last year, we went in and we renegotiated the contract with OVG. That's the company that does all the booking and the management of the Stride Center. And in that 3-year contract that we just signed, we can terminate that contract any one of those years that go during that process. I think probably if you noticed during the budget meeting last week, whenever they were, the representatives from OVG were there, they were talking about how they were running a deficit again this year. You probably noticed I didn't have a lot to say. That was because just prior to that meeting, I'd had a meeting with them. I'd spent an hour, and I made it very, very clear that this was not going to continue. And if I could not change people, I was going to change people. So, that being said, I feel like I've put them on notice that we're not going to continue to do this. We want the Stride Bank Center. We want good entertainment coming in. We cannot pay $125,000 to $500,000 for some of these bands to come in. That's not realistic. But they're doing the booking. It's going to have to change, or we're going to make a change on that. So I just want you to know I hear you loud and clear. It's something I've been working on for the last 2 years. I have not been happy with it, but I do want you to know there are reasons behind what is it that we are doing. We're also competing against the casinos. The casinos will pay whatever these bands want because they don't care whether you come to the concert. They want you to come into the casino. Now, I know there are people that will say, well, why don't we just put in casino? Because they do not pay sales tax revenue. There is no gain there for the city of Enid. So, with all that being said, I want you to know, and I want your takeaway to be, that we realize the problem. And I know people love to get on social media and talk about every problem out there. What I don't find are people with solutions. That's what we have to do. That's what we're going to do. One way or the other, we're going to find a solution with this Stride Bank Center. It's a good addition to the city of Enid. I want it. We're going to figure out a way to keep it, but there's going to have to be some changes. So with that being said, I hope I've kind of cleared up a few of the misnomers that are going on down there. And I'll say one more thing. At the end of the day, when we do have good entertainment that comes in, I'm talking about the good concerts, we need folks to show up and buy tickets. Myself included. You've got to go buy tickets, or we've got to pull that out of operating expenses. So, with that being said, we'll get it all figured out, but we've got to have solutions. I know all the problems, and we're working towards that. So I'll end the show with just saying that I appreciate your questions. I appreciate every concern that you have. Please don't stop sending in those questions to askmason@enid.org, or you can simply just go on, I always have to look at it, Facebook.com/Mayor David Mason, and follow that page. Follow that page. I think you'll like it. Thank you. Enjoy your day in Enid, Oklahoma.